All right, guys, we're going to be taking a look at the United States Navy training film from 1952. And here we go. The naval concepts of biological and chemical warfare. We're seeing it all over the skies today. Biological and chemical sprays are invisible, but for pictorial purposes, this film will depict them as being visible. This film will first show what the Navy is planning for the offensive employment of biological chemical warfare. Have two principal objectives: to reduce the enemy's production of food, destroying his crops and his food-producing farm animals, and to incapacitate the enemy's armed forces, that portion of his human population that directly supports them. The Navy is preparing to accomplish these objectives with both biological and chemical agents. The Department of Defense has assigned primary responsibility to the Chemical Corps, U.S. Army, and for basic research in biological chemical agents and for their production in the quantities needed by the joint services. The Navy, therefore, is primarily concerned with the delivery of these agents to the areas ordered for contamination and the dispersion of the agents in such form and concentration as to accomplish the desired objectives. Where can the Navy attack? As long as the Navy commands the seas, it can deliver a biological or chemical attack anywhere on the 3/4 of the Earth's surface that's covered by water. And its carrier-based aircraft can strike hundreds of miles inland from any coastline and attack a large portion of an enemy's population, shipping, and industrial centers. The Navy can deliver and disperse these agents in three ways: from the air, from the surface, and from below the surface. The surface Navy delivery of the agent started with tests made in 1950. A rather crude spraying system was installed on a mine layer, which in September that year secretly cruised off California and sprayed some 50 gallons of biological stimulant along a track 2 to 5 miles offshore. Within an hour, the stimulant had been carried ashore by the wind. Sampling tests indicated that about 48 square miles of heavily populated areas were contaminated. Had an infectious agent been used in the spray, there might have been 210,000 casualties. With that experiment successful, the southeast coast of the United States was selected for a larger scale test. The rather flat terrain would be favorable to wide dispersion of windborne particles, but wide dispersion, of course, would depend upon the existence of the proper weather conditions. After extensive studies, it was determined that a tract along here, 5 to 15 miles offshore, would do the job. The job, according in April 1952, the USS Tercel cruised along the same 100 miles of coastline, spraying 250 pounds of fluorescent tracer particles. The operation lasted about 8 hours. Sampling tests made throughout North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia indicated that an area of some 20,000 square miles received these particles, proving that it is possible to contaminate extremely large land areas by releasing sprays at sea under the proper weather conditions. In an actual attack, spray would be released from either a submarine submerged to periscope depth or from an aircraft cruising at low altitude, like the Zika sprayer planes. The submarine operation experimenting with mines has been carried out, which is significant in this type of warfare. The mine used was similar to the Mark 10-3, which the submarine service is accustomed to plotting the mine-provided spaces for biological stimulant, and compressed air. It also incorporated timing devices releasing from the mine of its morning and for starting the spray action trials they held at Key West, Florida in April 1952. 7 of these mines were laid. The top trials demonstrated that the Navy has a powerful offensive weapon for biological warfare. Here are the principles involved. As the submarine approaches a coastal target area, it lays these mines filled with biological agents. They sink to the bottom and remain inactive for a predetermined time while the submarine escapes. Then, At a preset time, the main portion of each mine detaches itself from the mooring part, rises to the surface, and sprays its contents into the air. Can be carried ashore by the wind. The Key West trials show the feasibility of using this type of mine for contaminating coastal areas and inland areas can be brought under biological attack by laying similar lines from aircraft in bays and inland waterways. Other tests have been conducted to determine the best application of this type of warfare in an amphibious operation. A spray tank has been designed for towing behind a swimmer. These swimmers may be discharged through torpedo tubes of submerged submarines, or they may be dropped overboard close to the shore and would tow the tank to a point near the beach. While this test was manually operated, future developments will provide a time delay and automatic release of the spray while the swimmer escapes. Under the right weather conditions, the aerosol will be carried inland over the proposed amphibious attack area. Plans for amphibious operations would of course take into consideration the incubation period of the biological agent. The Navy has given a considerable attention to this dissemination of agents from the air. Navy or Marine plane that can carry a bomb can be provided with spray equipment. Check it out. The auxiliary fuel tanks in an attack-type aircraft can be converted to anti-crop spray tanks by adding electric pump or nozzle and a venturi. This assembly has been designated the Aereo X2, a spray equipment eddy crop spray from aircraft using the Aereo X2 has proved very effective in field trials. Another development has been the design of the Aereo X14, an all-purpose spray tank. This tank can be used for disseminating all types of agents. Extensive tests using the F7F as the carrier has shown that it works especially well at high speeds and can be used on jet aircraft such as the F9F Panther, the F2H Benji, and other future planes of this time. For larger planes, the Air Force has perfected spray equipment. This B-17 has several spraying nozzles and carries a tank in the bomb bay. The same equipment has been installed in a C-47 and has performed satisfactory. The equipment and it can be installed in any plane with a bomb bay, such as a Navy's P-2V or similar land-based planes or flying boats. Morris is the first model of an air-launched missile development by the Navy specifically for biological or chemical warfare. It's called the Jorgon 5. It's a program preset missile with guided mechanism mounted in the nodes. An Aero 14, a tank, will be mounted here in the midsection. Spray will be through an internal pipe from the tail section, which also contains the control surfaces and operating mechanisms fully loaded. The missile weighs about 2,400 pounds and can be flown from the deck of the carrier. When released, the missile will follow a glide path of about 15 degrees to a predetermined low altitude, where it will automatically level out and spray a preset position launched from a carrier several hundred miles at sea. Planes carrying the Gorgon finds would approach about 35,000 feet and release their missiles about 20 miles from the target. This altitude minimizes interception, and the range is well beyond the anti-aircraft fire. The Gorgon fires when they glide to the target and automatically spray their contents over the predetermined area before destroying themselves. Another weapon that is also being considered is the Regulus, is a large, long-range guided missile, surface-launched, jet-propelled, and electronically guided. Launched from a submarine or a ship at sea, this missile would fly a tank of agent over the target area and automatically disseminate. Its Regulus is still in the development stage and his adaptation to biological and chemical warfare is something for the future. Well, we've already way past that. At present, the Navy's plans for the use of these projectiles in this type of warfare are confined to dispersion of chemical agents. For its ship, the Navy has or will have a variety of gas-filled projectiles. The 5-inch 38 caliber, the 5-inch 50 for the 6-inch 47, the 8-inch 55, and the 5-inch spin-stabilized rocket. In addition to the Marines now have chemical munitions for the 44.2-inch mortar, the 155 millimeter howitzer, and a 105 millimeter howitzer. The millimeter within the near future will have the chemical munitions for the 155 millimeter gun and the 4.5-inch rocket. We have seen the Navy will be able to do in waging biological and chemical warfare. There you go. And since then, we found out that these chemicals that they sprayed off the coast of California are all considered carcinogens, and a few people actually got sick. Might even have been one death. I'd have to go back and try to find that article. Services in protective clothing, gas masks, immunization. Some of the special protective devices developed by the Navy, which can be used for biological and chemical defense, are the ship's water curtain or shower band to minimize contamination by washing deadly agents overboard as soon as a spray touches the ship's surfaces. An electrostatic precipitator cleans contaminated air by passing it through a charge field and depositing the charged infectious particles onto grounded plates, resulting in clean air. And see, of course, the motility, maneuverability of the naval ship. The command of its experienced and well-trained personnel is one of the Navy's best defense against the biological or chemical attacks. On the Navy's plans and programs are directed toward the goal of attaining at the earliest possible date an adequate defense and to be ready to strike with the most powerful cover attack that the Navy is capable of delivering from the air, from the sea, and from under the sea. Just another example showing that we are the lab rats. And if you think the lines crisscrossing in the sky are just water vapor, just stay tuned. We're going to be talking about the 1923 smoke curtain next video. Much love. Make sure you subscribe to all the different channels. Much love.